fuselage of the plane because they were worried that it wasn't stable enough. And
they were also kind of worried about booby traps.
That too. They had also considered putting a rope around it and having the helicopter lift it up to try and flip it over, but they didn't believe that structurally it would stand that, and it would probably just crumble and be a waste of time. So they couldn't do a whole lot, and part of the reason that it was so unstable is when Baron 52 went down, it had about 5 hours of fuel on board. That's a lot of fuel to burn. That melts metal. That's part of the problem. Is it destroys it melts people, and it
melts steel beams.
Yes, it does.
That steel beams light jet fuel on fire. You got it backwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. But of course the important point here is that because, and this is the thing that people gravitate to, because they never went into the rear of the plane, they never actually saw any bodies. Now, just to give you a little bit of context here, the bodies of the men that they found in the front, they were badly burned. They were really badly burned, but was it Novex? Was that the kind of suit? I can't remember. Their flight suit.
Novex or Nomex?
Nomex might have been it, I think. Thank you. It's flame retardant flight suits. The flight suits are what kept their bodies from being entirely consumed by flames.
Unfortunately, they didn't cover everything.
No, it's just like the black box in the plane. Why don't they just make the whole plane out of it? We have this conversation every time.
Well, here's a question.
Yes.
Would the rear enders have also been wearing flight suits like that?
I cannot say.
We don't know.
Okay. I don't know.
I don't know. I would presume that they would be wearing flight suits as well, but I would have, and not just in regular jumpsuits, but God knows I don't have the military history background to be able to answer that, unfortunately.
That's fine.
Yeah. So here's the other thing is that the search and rescuers, when they got on the ground, they said that even though the plane had been consumed by fire, when they looked at where the rear jump door was, this is the rear door of the plane.
Yeah, the main entrance, where people climbed in and out.
Right. Yeah. And from looking at these doors, and I might be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but it appeared to me it was an opening that was on hinges, but there was also a kick-out portion of that door that in an emergency you could just punch it out.
There is, yeah. It's actually the framed one is actually just kind of, it really is just kind of a frame.
Yeah.
The parachute door that you kick out is almost as big as the entire door.
Well, the point is, even in that much heat, a portion of that kick-out door should have been there. They should have seen it, and when they looked at the plane, they didn't see that.
Yeah.
So this is corroboration from search and rescue that the door is missing, which means maybe the guys weren't there.
Or maybe it critically failed and blew out because the plane was on fire and pressure was weird.
Maybe possible as well. People will also say, well, those search and rescuers, they didn't find any of the sensitive radio equipment that was in the back of the plane. So that's proof that the guys, because keep in mind, these guys' job in the event the plane is going down is to take the equipment with them. But key point, if they don't go in the back of the plane, they can't confirm if that equipment is actually there.
Yeah, and
that's a claim that always frustrates me when I read it.
Well, one of the things I wonder about too is before they left, did they toss a few thermite grenades into the plane to make sure their equipment was totally fried?
I would imagine that they would not have done that because if they jumped, the plane was still in the air, which means the men piloting the aircraft.
I meant the search and rescue guys.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't think search and rescue did anything, but they recovered one body or partial remains of one body, and then they had to boogie.
I understand their self-preservation. I understand they could also have been shot down or things like that. But I would assume that if it was so important that the enemy not gain access to this proprietary covert technology,
you would think they would destroy it.
That if they weren't 100% sure that it was not there or already destroyed, they would have done something to destroy it. Yeah. So I guess for me, even though we can say they didn't go into the back of the airplane, it didn't look like the back of the airplane was really intact that much from the really grainy pictures you find online that are, I think, all aerial, right?
Yeah, it's one aerial photo reused over and over and over and over and over and over and over.
But you can hardly tell, but it does look like to me you can kind of see the front of it, and then the back of it just looks like it's blown out. And maybe your impression of that was different. But so I don't know that there was necessarily a back to go into. They could have done a visual search of.
So
nope.
Well, here's what the search and rescue guys do: is they get on the ground. One or two post up as guards, and then only two of them are actually searching the plane, and they spend about 15 plus minutes attempting to extract one of the bodies from the cockpit.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's not counting.
They didn't have a lot of time.
No, that's not counting the time that they dropped. So they've already expended 15 minutes. It's only two of them. I don't know that they really were able to do too much snooping around, but you're right, that plane was a total disaster. As I said, it's upside down, the wings are shorn off, the tail is broken off, and something like 100 yards behind the wreck.
Yeah.
So they may have looked at it and went, no, nothing could have survived that fire, and there's no reason to even bother to look for the equipment. That's a very valid point. I don't know. I just react to people saying, and they knew that it wasn't there, because they don't actually know.
Yeah, I've heard a story that they say that the parachutes were gone and the equipment was gone, and, but in the official thing, I don't think it's said one way or the other.
I think I'm willing to say it was functionally gone.
Yeah.
I mean,
it
may not have physically not been there, but it probably just.
They still should have lobbed some thermite grenades in there.
I would agree with that. That's why we're going to be a good zombie apocalypse team. But I'm just saying, to me, I cannot imagine if it was as sensitive as it seems like it was, that their main directive would have been find the bodies. That rather their main objective would have been, hey, make sure that.
Well, no, that's what I was saying before. Is that they had it was multiple responsibilities. Was recover the equipment if possible, or destroy it. Recover and identify the bodies if possible. Recover them
and make sure there's nobody alive.
Right,
right, of course, and look for survivors. So, but they were doing all of this at the same time. Yes.
Totally, yeah.
Okay, so they go, they look, they recover one set of remains. And initially, the U.S. Air Force lists the 4 men that are in the rear of the plane as missing in action. And then several days later, and by the way, this is after they've contacted the families and said, listen, this is what happens to your son. We believe they're missing in action. We don't have anything to lead us to believe anything different. And I've read the requirements from the U.S. Air Force that says they actually err on the side of missing in action rather than killed in action unless they absolutely positively can confirm somebody saw it.
You don't want to list somebody as dead that isn't.
Right.
The paperwork alone to get somebody back alive.
But these guys come out, the Air Force says this is what's going on, and then suddenly 8 days later, I think it's 8 days after, which is weird because it's the same number of days. Anyway, 8 days later, they come out and they say, oh, yeah, no, those 4 men, they were definitely killed in action. They were definitely killed when that plane went down. And that leaves a funny taste in a lot of people's mouths because they were the word I've seen it described as hasty. They were very hasty in that decision. And things we're going to talk about in the theory section may explain why they felt that, or people feel that was such a hasty decision. So we are now done with the story. So as always, we need to go into theories.
Oh boy.
So let's talk about the first theory. That first theory is that per the United States Air Force and all of its reporting,
they told the truth.
They told the truth, and the men did actually die in the crash.
Why would that happen?
Yeah, not surprising, I guess.
Well, and let's run through it because I mean the official report says all 8 of them died in the crash, and they say that there are several things that confirm this. There's first off is the fact that there was no radio contact from the crew whatsoever, and they would have expected that. And let me clarify what they're talking about here, because first, these men are so well trained that it is expected that as the plane is descending, losing flight, falling out of the sky.
Losing altitude.
Losing altitude. There's the word I was looking
I like
for.
losing flight.
Losing
I think I'm going to use
flight,
that from now on.
Yeah, okay. So as it's descending, if it were capable of having made contact or sent out a broadcast of some kind, whether it be from the pilot or the men in the back of the plane, that should have happened automatically.
Yeah,
somebody should have said, Mayday,
something.
Mayday, Mayday, we're going down.
It makes a lot of sense because you want them to know you're going down so they can come look for you right now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Also, just to drive home a point, they radioed in every time they almost got hit, right?
And they checked in every half hour.
They checked in every half hour, but more than that, at 30, they said, just got missed. At 40, before they had to check in again, they said
missed.
Just got missed again, and then silence. So, if somebody's shooting at them, they're gonna. If they're radioing to say somebody's shooting at us and missing us, they're gonna radio and say, they hit this time.
Hitting us. Yeah. Oh hell yeah.
Now people do say, well, of course, something happened and the engines died, but of course the plane had batteries on it, so the radios would have worked even if both engines had literally fallen off of the plane. It still would have continued to have electricity to be able to send a radio signal of some kind.
Yep.
The only thing I can think of here is that they may have tried to be sending radio signals, but I'm guessing that whatever hit them probably destroyed their antenna array. Now I don't know enough if there was a backup antenna, but
seems like if it was literally meant to be picking up radio signals, they would have some.
But I don't know that they're necessarily broadcasting with the same equipment that they are listening with. I don't know, Devin, and I don't want to run down that alley.
They did have a lot of different radio gear and a lot of antennas on those planes.
Right, so it's hard to say.
And it's like Amelia Earhart, you're going to have at least, not like Amelia Earhart, she had like one. Okay. Okay, you're gonna want to have at least 2, maybe 3 radios for communications purposes with base,
absolutely. So the second kind of radio contact that was expected to be heard from these guys, if indeed they bailed out, was it should have been radio contact that was coming from what is known as air crew survival radios, and that is literally the hit a button and it just sends out an automated distress signal.
Little thing that goes, help me.
Something like that. Have you ever seen that Owen Wilson movie Behind Enemy Lines? And he's got the funny little radio Find Me box. It's an early version of what they show in that movie. Now, I'm not telling you to go see that movie. It's not a great movie. I just thought about it.
Owen Williams doing a non-comedy. What are we talking about here? What the hell?
It happened. I'm sure it was some bad contract negotiation by his agent. I don't know, but he did it.
It will interest you all to know they have those in all of the inflatable lifeboats now.
Very similar, yeah.
And most
same concept.
Personal flotation devices.
Yeah, they're little handheld about the size of a walkie-talkie, and you just flip the switch. You don't have to do anything complicated, and they go off. And if these guys had bailed out, according to the Air Force, they should have been broadcasting with these things right away.
You assume they would, because it'd be the way they'd be found.
Yeah, you would have an incentive there, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Other things that the Air Force points out, they say the condition of the aircraft, because like I said, as we talked about a couple of times, it was upside down, and they say they're pretty sure that plane came in nose first. The lack of any kind of skid marks through the jungle or anything.
No broken treetops or anything like that.
Nothing like that. It appears that it fell nose first vertically and hit and boom, and then flopped over on its back.
Yeah, it could be like maybe a wing fell off or something like that, and it went into a tailspin.
The Air Force thinks that it went into a tailspin, and that's actually a really important thing, because if the plane is in a tailspin, from what I understand, would be all but impossible for those guys in the rear of the plane to be able to punch out the jump door and then be able to jump out of that plane and clear it. Like they shouldn't have been able to get out, because either it's blowing, it's spinning into the door. That would, then create the air pressure you can't get away from. Yeah. And I don't know that you'd want to jump it was spinning the other direction, because then that's just going to throw you right into the propellers.
Yeah.
I mean, this all sounds like logical reason.
I guess, for me, I would presume to just kind of address the fact that they, took 8 days to go from MIA to killed in action.
Mm-hmm.
I think, what you were saying is true, that the Air Force is very tentative to just say...
Military in general, yeah.
Yeah, and so, people should be pretty tentative to just say, oh, they're dead. But it really, what it sounds like happened to me is, they found their wreckage and they said, okay, there's a possibility that maybe, without having assessed anything, there's a possibility that maybe they failed out. We did not conclusively find their bodies, so, okay. And they went back and assessed it and, came to this story where what the forensic evidence or whatever, said, and realized really there's no plausible possibility that these men survived this crash, and then moved them. 8 days is a reasonable amount of time to spend investigating something like this, I think.
Sure.
I don't know that they actually investigated it for 8 days, though, is the point here, Devin.
But
and that's what people get so peeved off about, is that it wasn't as if for 8 days a U.S. Air Force group spent nothing but time looking at the data and saying, okay, what exactly happened, and giving a determination.
It doesn't take 8 days to look at this stuff.
Right, but can I clarify that
yeah.
It would be even more suspicious to a lot of people if, like, a day later they were like, well, just kidding, killed in action. You know what I mean? Like, they had to get all of the footage, they had to take statements, they had to probably, like, have a couple of experts. They had to really take the time to compile all of the evidence. It's not that I'm saying they're sitting there in a room for 8 days, blah, blah, blah. Probably not even compiling evidence for 8 days, realistically, but that the process could have reasonably taken 8 days, and that they could have said, yep.
Their manuals actually point out, if you cannot confirm nobody laid eyes on what happened
on the body,
you do not change them from MIA to KIA.
That's fair.
And that's really what sticks in the craw of all of these families of these four men. And this was in 1973. For 5 years, these families just lived with the understanding that their sons had died in the crash when the plane went down.
Yeah.
Until in 1978, somebody from the U.S. Air Force called them up to tell them that there was a possibility that the men had actually gotten out and been captured by the enemy, which is something we talked about in the beginning.
Sure.
So let's move into theory number 2, which is they actually bailed out.
And were captured.
Exactly.
Okay.
What happens, what's going on with this? Well, there's a lot of stuff going on in it. The basics of it are that Melton, Matajov, Cressman, and Brandenburg, like we said before, they parachuted out and then were immediately captured by the People's Army of Vietnam. And then those crewmen would have been considered very valuable assets, not only to the Vietnamese, but to the good buddies of the Vietnamese, the Soviet Union.
Sure, they would have turned them over to them, and they would have taken them back to Moscow or wherever. And,
they would have gotten them out of the country because they're radio men, so they know U.S. Air Force codes and procedures. They have a lot of knowledge in them that you can see the Soviets really, really wanting to have the opportunity to get their hands on. So that's kind of the general breakdown of the theory in the beginning, and then we'll get into our thickets of bits here. So we're going to talk about that radio communication again. It said, and I'll give it to you again, it says, Group 217 is holding 4 pilots captive, and the group is requesting orders concerning what to do with them. And then the second version is, presently Group 210 has 4 pirates. They are going from 44 to 93. The things that people point out that are really interesting about that is that apparently the Vietnamese interchangeably use the words pilot and pirate all the time for guys flying planes. They consider them to be pirates, I guess, is the reasoning.
Well, I've heard also that they, and this wasn't the Vietnamese, I thought it was the Laotians that captured these guys. They were going to turn them over to the Vietnamese.
I was always under the impression that it was the Vietnamese that had done it. because it was on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and therefore the Vietnamese army was flowing through there.
It could have been. I was thinking, well, we can agree to disagree on that.
I just don't know.
But I had heard that they use nomenclature, like the word pirate could apply to like bandits, and also just members of the opposition. Like there were anti-communist guerrillas operating in the area too. And apparently, I heard they referred to them as pirates, also.
Yeah, so it was basically a word to describe the enemy, not just a particular group. And so, if pilot and pirate are mistranslated or decoded, that could lead to confusion. Which, again, it's obviously led up to a whole bunch in here.
Sure.
Let's see. We had at one point in the initial reading, it was group 217. In the second reading, it was group 210. People say that the difference phonetically in the language between 210 and 217 isn't much, so it could easily have been mistranslated. So there's something that people poke holes into it with. But really what people always want to know about is, okay, so what's up with the 44 to 93? And that has been interpreted quite a lot to mean kilometer markers along some kind of route, along a road, whether it be an east-west or north-south road. People are saying, well, this means that what they're saying is that they were taking them from kilometer marker 44 to kilometer marker 93. But we don't know where that goes.
Well, you don't know.
That's a hard one.
Those also could have been just like code numbers that meant, like, 44 meant alive, 93 meant dead. It could have been that then.
Yeah.
There could have been a lot of different things.
I mean, it may have been coded to the degree that whoever decoded it didn't decode it correctly. It may not have had the entire key. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea.
I had heard that some of these, at least one of these messages, was actually decoded by a guy Laotian was not his primary language. In other words, he wasn't that strong in Laotian.
Yeah.
He was a linguist, but I don't think it was his big language. And so a lot of weight has been placed upon this guy's interpretation.
Is he the one who did the second interpretation?
Yeah.
And I had his name written down.
Nelson or something like that.
Yeah, and
I can't remember his name.
I don't have it written anymore, but he is apparently the one that raised the stink and got the families involved in 78.
So can you just clarify for me here?
Yeah.
This transmission was picked up by a plane pretty far away, right?
Yeah, over the sea.
So a couple 100 miles, maybe?
Let's say, sure.
Okay, big question. How do we know this is even about this thing?
We don't.
Okay.
And that's a very good point to raise. From the U.S. Air Force, they say that the person who was monitoring the frequency that this original message came through on believed that all of the communication that he was listening to was actually coming out of Vin City, which is 250 miles away, 400 kilometers from the site, from where Baron 52 went down.
Yeah.
People say, well, that's an awfully long ways away to be related. I will use a grain of salt here and say that doesn't really bother me so much, because it could have been somebody calling up the chain of command who was then calling up the chain of command who was then calling up the chain of command. A game of telephone to get the message along. I'm just saying that I could see that. I'm not saying that's a serious contention, but that is one of the problems with it, that it's not from that very, very close range to the crash site.
But beyond that, there were other reasons that people believe they got out of the plane and they were captured, right?
There are.
Yeah.
Which parts are you talking about here? Because I'm looking through my list.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I'm just talking about the door being missing, the parachutes being gone, and all that stuff. Yeah. And are we through the debunking part yet? Do we want to go there yet?
No, because there's a couple of things here that I find interesting that might explain why some of this stuff is going on. So one of the reasons that, so if these guys get out and they are immediately captured, remember that this is just about the time that the Paris Peace Accords have gone into effect. And one of the, it's not a stipulation, but one of the articles of the Accords is that prisoners of war will be returned, and the bodies of the dead shall be repatriated. You shall send them home. Both sides should be doing this. Okay, so this is what everybody wants to have happen. So if that's the case, and suddenly the U.S. screws the pooch and drops a plane in the jungle, proving that it's doing what it's not supposed to, do you want to allow that to jeopardize the return of all those other guys? In other words, are you willing to forfeit these 4 for the other hundreds, if not thousands?
But and just to be clear, this is not you talking. This is what the people.
The theory says,
say, yeah.
I mean, obviously, we're not saying it's the trolley conundrum, right? Do you sacrifice you got the one person on the tracks that you care about and the 20 people
on the trolley?
On the other track, and do you throw the switch? I don't know. It's a good question, especially on the possibility, right? It's not even.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even. We know for sure they're alive. It's we think they might be alive. So are we going to sacrifice? Are we going to get caught doing this thing, or are we going to get our thousands of POWs back? Which is?
It wasn't thousands. It was kind of hundreds.
But I mean, you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, although I don't think this thing would have jeopardized that. That's one problem I have with this theory is that.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot of problems.
What the U.S. was doing over Laos with recon and all that stuff was not actually wrong and really in violation of the Accords anyway. I mean,
I think they were supposed to be stopping all missions, and this is to me, when I read this, it's a pretty blatant violation of stop what you're doing. All things. I mean, everybody is out. Quit doing it, send everybody home, and here's all these guys at this airbase that are still flying as if nothing happened.
It was just 8 guys going for a plane ride. I don't know.
Well, but this was one of many, many, many planes that the U.S. had in the air, which is why,
not that they know of. It's just the one.
Well, but they do because
I should be a communications
because of the fact that I mean, think about this. So the Vietnamese or the Laotians, they're shooting at these airplanes that they see overhead.
They're hallucinating
because they're not supposed to be there, and they know they can't get in trouble for shooting one down because it's not supposed to be there in the first place.
UFOs.
So you're going to deny it, and that is why people also say that because the government knew that they shouldn't have had that plane in the air, they so hurriedly changed the status from MIA to KIA because they realized that they got their hand caught in the cookie jar.
Well,
and you like you said, it's that same conundrum.
This is the problem I have with that explanation, though, is that the U.S. government didn't really get caught with its hand in the cookie jar. Just there's a ceasefire, which means you stop shooting at each other. It doesn't mean that you stop paying attention to what the other side is doing.
I'm not gonna debate it. I feel personally that I think it was in violation, but that's my personal thought. I think that others may have felt that way. According to this theory, that somebody else in command was worried about the same thing.
Yeah, but I think these people are wrong. But
so. Let's keep moving forward so we don't beat a dead horse.
Oh, yeah, let's not do that.
Let's move into what I don't even know how to classify this next bit because it's kind of theory related. And I called it modern hinkiness because
I think that's a great theory.
Okay, so it's modern hinkiness. So
hinkiness, okay.
Okay, so here's the thing. There's a piece of information that I haven't shared with our listeners that I know you two know.
You scoundrel.
I know. And that is that we went back to the crash site of Baron 52. It just took us 20 years to get there.
Yeah, 93. But,
yeah. So, actually, they went in 92 and the commission report came out in 93. It took them 18 months, apparently, to get it all figured out. But a Senate committee sent investigators to the site, and when they got to that site, they uncovered 31 bone fragments and a tooth fragment, as well as zippers and other bits of flight gear. There was 4 corroded revolvers. The wood's gone, the metal is all corroded up. You can see the photos of these things online. They also found the D-rings from 8 parachutes, So they say that's evidence that the men couldn't have gotten out.
Okay,
but
to be fair,
yeah,
that just means they probably didn't successfully make it to the ground. It doesn't mean they did.
In the crash site.
No, but I'm just saying, like, it just means they didn't take parachutes with them. It doesn't mean they didn't jump out of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. They could have just decided to go see if they could fly on their own.
Yeah,
Although
maybe.
Actually, the parachutes are stored, or they were stored, in the aft of the plane, right across from the entrance door, and the entrance or exit, depending on your point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in a bin, and there were places in the bin for a dozen chutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say also it seems like they would have extra.
12 minus 4 is 8 after all.
Right. Well, but that's the thing is that if indeed there's only 8 chutes, where's the D rings for the extras? That's the question.
Well, and so, but I mean, to some people, the president